Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Majestic Data Solutions YouTube series. And today we're going to be looking at how to web scrape some data using an R Markdown with both R and Python inside that R Markdown. And then we're going to take that data in that R environment. Then we're going to put it into AWS. In particular, we're going to use simple storage, the S3 solution that Amazon has. Very cheap, very lightweight, pretty good for kind of like API storage, just like data frames and JSONs. And in this episode, I'll actually show you how to save a list, which is a pretty common file type in R. So that's the outline of today. We're going to be getting Wikipedia and Fintel data on BlackRock in terms of, we're going to be looking at investment management. One of my friends recently, I was talking to him about this stuff, about web scraping and investments, and we were using BlackRock as an example, so I decided to go down this path. And so what we're going to do is we're going to grab Wikipedia data, we're going to grab some data from Fintel, and then we're going to send it to AWS. And so to start, what you're actually looking at on this screen is the output of the R Markdown document. So the top part of this is the actual code, right? This should look familiar. I'm assigning BlackRock Wiki. I'm assigning that as a string variable, right? So that's the URL here. And what we want from this website, we want this table that gives the finances from 2005 to 2018. Sometimes in your company, this can be useful, right? Like you can do growth rates for competitors, right? And it's just kind of nice to have around. It typically doesn't hurt. So let's grab this data. So we establish that, then we feed that URL into a command for read HTML. We want a data frame, so we basically want a little Excel sheet back. String as factors is true. Then we're gonna basically grab that HTML. We're gonna look for the tables, and then we're gonna fill the tables. And this is gonna create a data frame. So I denote that with df. And then we're gonna put that df into a data table with this command. And so that's the top part that ran. The bottom part of this is where this is the output. Right, so this should look familiar, 2005 to 2018, 2005 to 2018, and it's got all that good stuff. So these are the slides, and so that's how you kind of do it. And it's pretty easy to get going with this, but let's kind of go to the actual console first. We're going to knit this really fast just to do it. And to give a little synopsis on this top part, this is where you just set the title slide. And I grabbed some custom CSS, so you'll notice the background of my report is blue. And so this is the title slide with Majestic Data Solutions and web scraping. So if you go here, you see all that. And then I put that styles, right? So this is actually the color blue. Yep, that blue. So that's the color of the deck that I chose. And you can get really fancy with the CSS, which is pretty cool if you're trying to do a lot of automated analysis. So yeah, let's start with actually running some code. So when you see these curly braces, that means you want to run code. And in particular, we're going to run R code. And what I'm calling this chunk is setup because I'm basically setting up all my libraries. And so you'll notice it runs all these commands, and you'll see it in your console below. But you'll also see that green light go on the left, which is great because when something does go wrong, it'll give you a red, hey, this didn't run. I will not continue to run the chunk. Then we give some pros. So these are the outlines of the deck. And then this is where we actually grab the Wikipedia data. As you can tell, when you press play on these chunks, they run the code. So that's the Wikipedia table that I was showing previously. And now we want to grab Fintel data. Fintel. This will give you the holdings that BlackRock has. So you'll see, I used to work in oil and gas, so 2.3% oil and gas. So if we add oil and gas, 2.3%. And then if we actually make it go, oil and gas. Great. So now that we have this data in R, that's pretty useful. So you'll notice I use R. I call this the Fintel chunk. Now let's say we wanted, somebody had the script to already do this in Python, and you don't want to change all the types, right? Because you're going to have to get rid of these commas. You want to make this numeric. So let's actually use Python. So someone gave you a Python script to do the exact same thing and they did the cleaning. You basically just run this chunk and you specify Python. I grab pandas requests, and then I get that same URL. I can do a get request or either HTML, and then I parse out the data frame. And so as you can tell, I'm in my Python environment over here, and you can see it is a data frame and all the variables we established here. So that's pretty cool, especially in the IDE like that. It's pretty easy to troubleshoot when things inevitably go wrong. And so now what we're going to want to do is store a couple of the things that we created earlier into a list, just to kind of show how you can do a bunch of different files. And especially with R, lists are so relevant that this could be a useful thing. If other people around you are using R, you put it to an S3, they can read in your lists, right? So if we look at this, we establish a list called BlackRock list, and we put the JSON and the data frame in there, and we look at the structure. And so if we look, there's a list of 2 because we put 2 arguments in here, and we have a JSON and we have a tibble. So that's our list. Now we're going to want to set the AWS credentials. So what I do is I have a folder and API keys, and what I do is I just basically set up a little Excel sheet that in the first row of it, you'll have the key ID, secret, key, and in order to basically load it into the environment, just from the CSV without hard coding it into your apps, because that gets a little wonky sometimes, I just read the CSV and I grab the column and I denote it with, hey, this is the region, right? So, and then I put that as the environment on my local machine so that when I'm pinging Amazon or I'm trying to read something from Amazon, it basically says I'm good. I have the credentials on this machine to do this action. So we're going to run that. And so I set the AWS credentials. Cool. And so if we look at this command, what you'll see, and just to give an overview, you get to S3 by going from home and use services and go to S3. S3 is essentially, they have these buckets. Buckets are directories. So you'll see I have a crypto project, I have a Zillow project, and this is the YouTube project. So if we actually delete all these in real time. So we deleted those. And so you'll see there's nothing in here now. And then if we go back to the chunk and we run this again, so you'll notice we have 4 objects now. It should have none now, right? So there are 0 objects in here. And all this command does is it checks your bucket. So I'm checking my YouTube bucket and I'm putting it into a data table. Now let's save some stuff, right? So we're going to send this data to AWS. We're using this S3 save commands. So it's agnostic of like a read or a save like CSV, it's just saving whatever. So in this one, I'm going to save a data frame, the Fintel data frame, a JSON, and then I'm also going to save that list that we made, right? And I'm going to save that as an R data type. So the data frames are easy. It's just the CSV file, JSON as well. So those are all pretty straightforward, but I think this list one is pretty cool, especially if other people around you are using R. So if we actually run this, and then we run this one again, you'll see they just updated, and there's 4 now. So there are no objects here. Now there are 4. So that's great, right? So you did all that work. People can ping this now, and they can ping this specific bucket to take advantage of maybe some data manipulations and web scraping that you've already done, so they don't have to do. So yeah, that's kind of an overview of how you can use this tool of an RMarkdown to make these pipelines. And as an end result, everything's really well documented with these slides of this is exactly what he did, this is what he saved it to, and this is, a lot of it is the manipulation part in the middle, and any kind of liberties people take in that process. Everything is right there, step by step with the code, with this nice little output. So I'm a really big fan of these, and I think they're really good for data pipelines, especially light ones in corporate America. So yeah, if you guys liked it, feel free to like it or subscribe. I look forward to doing another episode soon. Thanks.